Good evening. It is currently 2:45 a.m. and it is my birthday. And also the long-awaited part 10 of Vampire Jenny. So, wait until the end of this one because I have a song stuck in my head and I will be singing it. Well, like a little bit of it. Anyway, point is, here we go with the part 10 of Vampire Jenny. Here we go with Jason and Jenny going to church. Jenny would rather be anywhere else right now, especially home in her flannel pajamas, rather than fidgeting with the hem of her spring dress. Her entire presence, even next to the church, felt borderline anachronistic. In all fairness, it was, slightly. Her body was 9 days behind the current date. The mere act of going to church was incongruous with her current state of being a vampire. She didn't have any better way to describe her new thirst for blood. The fact that it was Sunday, and the Sunday she had missed at church was Easter, almost dissuaded her, but she held firm. The fact that some deranged psychic in another dimension had revived her was disconcerting enough. The best way for her to conciliate her veritable army of nice Catholic ladies who were grandparents and aunts to her was to go to church like nothing was amiss. The atmosphere in the church was despondent and austere, which was to be expected. She wasn't the only one that had died over the last few weeks. She forced a smile and waved to the other members of the church choir as she took her normal seat next to Gladys, the music director. A flock of confused and relieved members of the chorus accosted her with questions. She answered their questions benevolently with the bogus story she had colluded with her friends to create in a last-ditch attempt to keep the alternate dimension she died in a secret. That seemed to cull the number of people swarming her once the service began in earnest. It was supposed to be a time of rejoicing since it was the first Sunday after Easter, but Mass was more somber. Jenny, attesting to her friend's innocence, had caused the rest of the town to hold credence to her story. As she had said before, once something started circulating in the church's gossip circle, it was seen by the rest of their small town. Perhaps she could actually pull this off. Jason entered the church somberly, just as he had every Sunday since his girlfriend had been brutally murdered by that evil Satanist. He could have sworn he saw her entering the congregation, blonde hair swishing behind her. Last Sunday, the choir was missing someone, Jenny. She had died in the earthquakes that had killed dozens. Jason had nearly died in those earthquakes as well. A giant fault formed where he would have been if he hadn't sluggishly dragged himself to the opposite wall in that attic. He watched through hazy eyes as Lucas cried over the broken body of Max. She was in the hospital now. Jason wanted so badly for her to wake up so he could finally put to rest how Eddie had managed to kill Chrissy, Fred, and Patrick. He was so wrapped up in his thoughts, he didn't notice how the ladies of the congregation murmured about Eddie miraculously saving a young lady from the rubble. The choir sounded fuller, despite the loss they had experienced. It was good that they had found someone to fill in for the deceased so quickly. Songs echoed through the church, and muttered prayers of thanks surrounded him. Prayers were supposed to be private, but some still murmured them aloud. Jason just hoped that the fight was over. He hoped that Eddie would be caught, and he hoped that Chrissy was watching over him from heaven. He hoped that Max would wake up and explain to him what demon had taken control of her. It's such a shame that the Crawls won't be coming back. I can't imagine the poor girl's soul can rest easily knowing her parents aren't going to visit anymore, Irene whispered to Gertie in the pew in front of him. Right. Jenny's parents weren't coming for her funeral. This was expected at this point. Gossip around the congregation was frequently about how devout Jenny was and how she truly loved the Lord enough to walk to church in rain and snow. She had told him once that she only went to church to sing in the choir, and no one would believe him if he told them. She was right. Jason didn't want to believe that she really was in Eddie's cult, Hellfire Club, but the signs were there. He wanted to believe that she was just so good-natured that she helped those freaks pass their classes and nothing more. Whenever someone on the team asked her why she hung out with them, her response was always, "Blessed are the persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Matthew 5:3. But some guys on the team insisted she was a dyke and a tool of the devil. Jason had tried to shut down their dissent, but they still whispered among each other before spring break had started. Jason stayed in the pews praying after the service was over, mostly to pay respects to Chrissy and everyone else who had been killed by the maniac and the earthquake he likely caused. Jason, I believed you're owed an explanation. If you want to know what happened, come with me. A familiar voice stated, resting a pale hand on his shoulder. Jason whipped his head around, staring at her. She was wearing sunglasses, but looked almost exactly the same as she had 2 weeks ago when he had last seen her. Jenny? How are you alive? Jason asked in a panicked voice. Were the rumors true? Did she actually make a pact with the devil? I woke up in another dimension after being revived against my will by the same demon that killed Chrissy. I've been trying to kill him for 2 years, but he's really resilient. Eddie was framed, but we'll get to that later. Are you coming or not? She stated flatly, glaring over her sunglasses with piercing red eyes. Fine, Jason agreed begrudgingly, cautiously accepting the explanation he hoped for, presented on a silver platter. All right, did you drive here or are you getting in the car with me? Jenny sassed. Jason noticed that he was one of the few people she dropped her preppy persona around, and only when they were alone. He couldn't tell if she had a crush on him and was comfortable being herself around him, or if she hated him but was too polite to bash him in front of other people. Hint, Jason's friends were right about one thing. One more thing, Jenny noted, getting in the driver's seat of her car. The reason there's a squirrel in my kitchen is because it licked my blood off the sidewalk and is now my vampiric servant, so keep that in mind. Almond won't bite unless I tell him to, so if you start a manhunt for my best friend again, you will quickly find your blood being drained by an angry squirrel that I named after a nut. Your motivations were understandable when you didn't understand the full scope of what you were dealing with. Once I tell you everything, you no longer have that luxury, she said, pulling out of the church parking lot. She had a lot of explaining to do and red string to remove from Jason's conspiracy corkboard. This would take a few hours. All right, that is the end of the church section. And the next part is the trauma dumping. Oh boy, that one's gonna be fun. But as promised, there will be a song in this one, so I don't need no light to see you shine. It's your golden hour. Yeah, I haven't warmed up. It's 2:52 a.m. and I don't want to be louder than this. So, with all that said, good afternoon, good morning, good night, whatever time it is for you. Have a good time. Peace.